beverage as well. So
I'm having a pre-beer before the beer.
I don't drink beer, so I'm going to have to do Jack Daniels. But
there you go. That's right up our alley as well.
All right, give me 2 minutes. I'll pour myself a drink. I'm going to take you outside.
Perfect.
And take a week. All right.
That'll work.
Sean, on the next episode, for the segment that we do, I want to test out this. I'm testing out this new platform called Switchboard. You know, I was testing out Ecamm. I didn't like it too much.
Okay.
There's another one called Switchboard that is a multi-stream platform. But what I'll have to do is after this segment's over is create a new Zoom meeting, and I'll send you over the link and we'll jump on because I want to test it out on that.
Yeah. See
if we can send it over to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube all at the same time.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are using StreamYard right now.
Yeah. I looked at StreamYard too. I looked at Caster, StreamYard, and this Switchboard. So I'm trying to see which one I like the best and go with that. I've heard a lot of good things about StreamYard.
Yeah.
I just don't know how compatible it is with Zoom, since we use Zoom. Because I think one of the things I read with this platform is that it works well. It syncs pretty easily with Zoom. Do you want to read his bio?
Yeah, I guess. He didn't send one, right? It's just on the.
I'll post this on the crap I had. Oh, there it is. Dude, I went to Total Wine and More today, and I spent about 45 minutes in that place because I was picking out singles, and man, I couldn't. I was like wanting to load up more and more and more, and I kept seeing other stuff. It was hard to get out of there.
Yeah, they got everything. I haven't even been out this week. Like literally right now, until I really get my feet under this job, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's a little different from your
it's a 180, man.
From your style. Yeah.
It's actually good though. I mean, it's I don't think it's sustainable, but it's good.
Yeah.
Sure, the YouTube audience is like, man, this is riveting stuff.
Are you live?
I just forgot. Oh, you know what? Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Now we're cool.
All right. What do you guys want to talk about today?
We're going to talk about you.
Talk about me. That's boring.
No, I thought we'd talk about the
cigars, liquor.
We can talk about. We'll talk about cigars and beer, and then Jack Daniels, and then we'll talk about. So, I am curious about what you're up to these days.
All right.
So Rich, usually what we do is this is pretty casual. This started as us just having beer on a Friday afternoon and just talking shop. So that's kind of the vibe. But I did want to to me, your internet business manifesto was like one of the, great lead magnets of the last, I don't know how old that thing is now, 12 years?
14 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing a podcast now.
Oh, so I have to go inside?
She can be on.
Business and marketing.
Shocker.
Yeah, she's going inside. She knows better. I've heard that story 50 times.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Got the front porch.
What's the temperature down there today? Is it, I bet you're in the 80s, 85 degrees.
I'm in the Hamptons. I'm not in Florida.
Oh, okay.
So this is like the first day that we're like 60 degrees.
Okay. Are you heading back down south?
Not until this quarantine's over.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, we have a place in Manhattan and we have a place here. And so on March 13th was my birthday. And so we celebrated that in the city. And then March 14th, we came out here and we've been here ever since. So
Yeah, we're Texas is opening up today, so they opened up restaurants and retail. So
I'm so
there's
tired of
hope.
this.
Yeah, there's hope.
I am
Oh, shit.
so tired of this. All right. All right.
All right, we're ready.
We are ready.
All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool, and we've got a special guest with us today from the front porch. And you said you're in the Hamptons right now, right?
Hamptons.
Yeah, the Hamptons.
So for those of you
Yes.
who don't know, this is Rich Schefren. All right.
Who hasn't
thought-
heard of Rich, man?
I know, right? Anybody that listens to this show should have heard. For
Anyone
sure.
who got online in the last 5 years, probably.
Yeah, you have been kind of hiding. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I didn't do a lot for quite a while.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. We'll get into a little bit about Rich's background if you don't know him. But yeah, it's interesting, Jonathan. I don't even know if I told you the story, but I got a notification from Peloton that Rich was riding. And I know it's not his preferred mode. He'd rather have the elliptical so he can read and
Right.
All in pieces right now.
yeah.
But I
So-
used LinkedIn today to find a technician, so I'm very happy.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
nice.
It never occurred to me to use LinkedIn for that, but then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I finally found a use for LinkedIn, so that's cool.
There's a new course for you right there.
Yeah.
How to use LinkedIn to get your elliptical repaired in 3 easy steps. So yeah,
You
so
guys were biking at the same time?
we weren't at the same time. It just notifies you like when your Facebook friends are on
Mm-hmm.
Peloton. I just saw it come through and I was like, oh, I'm just going to touch base real quick. And here we are at a podcast. Crazy world. So,
Good stuff.
well,
Well, I'm still on your list about 14 years later, Rich. I never have unsubscribed, so still
I'd have
see
to
your
transfer
emails.
over. We started some new lists recently, but
Yeah.
we'll get into that, I guess.
yeah, we'll
Where
get
do we
into
want to
that.
start?
Well, I'm going to tease a little bit. So we're going to talk about, if you're not familiar with, I'm curious. We're going to talk about Rich's Internet Business Manifesto that is now 14 years old and why that worked so well. Was it just timing? Was it the content? Like what made that work so well and what lessons can we apply today? That's where we'll start. And then as our listeners know, it could go anywhere from there. But first, before we do that, we're going to introduce our beverages. And
Yes.
in this case, we've got a cigar featured on the show today as well. So, Rich, we'll let you start with what
We
you're
let our guests
drinking
go. Yeah.
and your cigar.
What I'm drinking is let's see, it should be on the thing, right? Jack Daniels.
There you go.
See if can you read it? I don't know if it's very light. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
can't see it.
yeah. There you go.
So Jack Daniels, and I'm smoking a Pappy Van Winkle.
Oh wow.
They're soaked in cigars that are soaked in Pappy Van Winkle. There was a gift from the guys from Traffic and Funnels,
Oh,
Chris
wow.
Evans and Taylor. So
That's a legit gift right there.
yeah, that is.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Got your attention, I'm sure.
hmm
So yeah, I mean that cannot be a cheap box of cigars.
Yeah, I don't even want to look. I might feel guilty about smoking them. So
Yeah, man.
I was hoping it was a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle.
Exactly. Yeah.
How much does a bottle of that run, by the way?
I know it's very expensive, and I know even if you're lucky if you can even find one.
Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, I've never had any, but I've heard of it like a gazillion times. So
Oh yeah.
I've seen one bottle in real life, and I think he said he paid $1,500 for it.
Nice.
that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't offer me any.
Yeah.
By the way. So it's, I did not make the guest list for that pour. So I noticed, Rich, you go with ice in your whiskey. Not a neat
Yeah.
guy.
No, not a neat guy. I like Jack on the rocks, and I don't even like what's fashionable now, the big rock, like the single.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like lots of pieces of ice. Maybe I'm sexually frustrated. I don't know. I like to chew on ice afterwards when it's all been soaked in the Jack. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's hey. However
I
you
do
like
too.
it. However you like it.
I've tried those stones, that you put in the
I have the
freezer.
stones too.
I
Yeah.
hate.
Yeah.
I don't like I like the ice better.
Yeah.
And it freaks me out a little bit because I'm so used to chewing the ice that I'm afraid I'm going to chew on a stone and crack my teeth.
Throw one back and forget it's there. Especially if you're like on a podcast or on a call and you're distracted.
Yeah.
Throw back a little whiskey stone and crunch. Yeah, that'd be rough for sure. Well, Jonathan, what do you got? You said you've already been sipping. What are you drinking over there?
Yeah, well, I had a pre-beer before the main beer.
A
So
warm-up,
I was actually drinking one that we had on our previous episode. But today, for the main show, I've got the Galactic Cowboy Nitro Imperial Stout from Left Hand Brewing.
Wow.
Why is it
So,
nitro?
Why is
Does
it
it have
nitro?
caffeine in it? Does it have like, is it one of
I
those
guess.
beers that has like,
I think it's the smaller bubbles. They actually use a different.
okay,
Yeah.
got
So
it.
it's the nitrogen bubbles. Like,
right.
Yeah, little nitro.
yeah.
And 9%
So you'll notice
ABV.
You'll notice the pour, the head should be, and you'll see the bubbling up
Yep.
at the bottom.
Yeah, let me
Yeah, so
pull
it's like
it
a
up.
nitro coffee, like
Yep.
same kind of thing,
Yeah, exactly.
like a
Look
Guinness.
at that. Oh,
Yep.
yes. Well, I got to turn.
Yeah.
I just
Jonathan-
I made
Jonathan
a critical
will-
error there.
Yeah. Watch your laptop there, buddy. There you go.
Very
you can
nice.
see you can see a
A
little
nice
of
color.
the foam there.
Yep,
So
yep.
well, I'm going with it's one of those weeks where I'm kind of cleaning out the fridge, you know,
Mhm.
and I didn't make it to the store this week because I didn't want to wear a mask. So so I'm boycotting stores right now that require a mask, like here in Travis County. So anyway, I pulled out one of the old ones, kind of the old it's the last one. I feel like it's collector's edition now. It's a chocolate stout, the Willy Wonka looking chocolate stout from Carbach Brewing. Why do you laugh at that, Jonathan? Like,
Because you've worn that one out, man.
what was I can't worn it out. It was only a 4-pack, so it was only 4 times.
it
yeah,
must be
I don't-
good though.
I don't drink as much during the week as you do. That's what's going on.
That's right.
So
That's right. That's right.
so
You save
I'm gonna-
them.
Yeah, I use them for the show, and that's about it. I drink my whiskey during the week.
Yep.
Because clients are like that.
Right drunk, edit sober.
Yeah, exactly.
Outside of Jack Daniels, what else do you? Any other whiskey that you enjoy there, Rich?
No, and I one time I saw that there was like we went to one of the liquor stores. This was like 4 years ago, and Jack had, I don't know if they still sell it, but they had like a Sinatra label, which was like their highest end one.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend and I decided that night I wanted to do a taste test, and so we bought the regular black bottle. We bought Gentleman Jack, single reserve, like single barrel Jack, and Sinatra, and did a taste test. I did a blind taste test, and I could identify all of them. I got them all right. But after I drank them all, I was like, I used to just buy single barrel, and I was like, I really actually like the taste. It got progressively smoother, and that's how I could tell. But I like the taste of just plain black Jack, the cheap one. And so that's what I still drink to this day. Yeah, that's the only thing I really drink as far as alcohol goes.
Yeah, cool.
I've been known to put alcohol aside and smoke pot, but but it's a lot easier for me to manage my drinking than it is my smoking. So I'm taking a hiatus from smoking right now.
I hear you. Well, cheers, guys.
Cheers. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a quick bio and then we'll jump in. So those that don't know about Rich, and this is just from your about page. So if whoever hasn't updated it, it's their fault.
It's probably bad.
Let's find out. Let's find out where we need to correct. So Rich Schefren, the guru to gurus, has personally added over $15 billion of additional revenue to his clients over the course of many years. Featured on media outlets, Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, ABC, NBC, Fox, NBC, got the whole banner going there. And many others. And you are the founder, owner, operator, I guess, of Strategic Profits.
Now
And,
co-owner.
Now co-owner. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get into that story. Helps. And basically, in a nutshell, Strategic Profits helps marketers win and businesses grow. So he's qualified to be on the show.
No doubt. So it's probably gone from 15 billion to maybe.
Oh, that's a pretty up-to-date number, actually.
Yeah.
That's an update number.
somebody's
Although
doing
what
their
it
job.
doesn't show, what's not mentioned there is I have a $1 billion testimonial from Agora, from Bill Bonner. So
Nice.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. We
Yeah.
were just talking about Agora
Yeah.
and Bill last week.
I was actually
Cool.
on a call with them today.
Oh, cool.
They're not for a good reason for them, but like they had apparently they had to lay off a bunch of people. So the client I'm with right now, they were looking to hire some of those, because there's good talent there. So we were looking to hire some of those people
Are
as
you
they.
working with Rob Braddock now? Like that same
Uh,
company in Texas?
No, I'm working
No.
with Brian Moran and also
Okay.
another that's capitalism.com, and then Rudy Maurer over at ROI Profits, which he's on the other side of Florida and Tampa.
Gotcha.
So those are my two big clients right now
Cool.
that I'm working with. So yeah, it's two totally different companies, totally different cultures, everything. It's interesting to kind of see the differences company to company and how they do things and all that stuff. So I thought we'd start with, the Internet Business Manifesto. I think was one of the first real lead magnets that I got online. And you said it's been like 14 years now. So that's kind of when some of the bigger players that are in the, internet marketing space and that kind of thing were starting to come on, So I'm curious, do you think, I just want to talk about what made that so successful? Because it's got millions of downloads.
It was
Right.
downloaded like 1 million times within the first 3 years, and then within the first 6 years, 2 million times, and then I think who knows now how many times.
Yeah.
But I wrote that in 2006, and when I wrote it, I was hoping to get a dozen clients. No joke. I had just finished my coaching programs, and I had a project with Agora 3 months down the road, and so I had this 3-month window of no cash flow. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if I could get maybe a dozen clients, work with them for 11 weeks, and doing a short version of my coaching program, which I was aiming to make it a year-long program, and the last batch had been a year and a half, 18 months, because it came with a guarantee, and the guarantee was you'll double your income and you'll cut your work hours in half, or I'll give you a complete refund. And I was personally coaching people, so I had time invested in all those people. But when I originally sold it, I didn't know how long it was going to take, and it took a year and a half. And so I finished that, and then I had this 3-month window, and thought, maybe if I wrote a report of what mistakes I saw people making, maybe I would get some people interested, and they would buy my coaching program. And in my life, it was a defining point in my life, you could say. There was my life before I wrote that report, and there was my life after, and they were very different. I wrote 7 other reports, or 6 reports. I don't, haven't counted them in a while, but in an 18-month period after that report, because I wasn't really sure what made it work so well. And so I wanted to test all my theories as to why it worked. And I kind of figured it out by the last report, which is why that was my last report. So the second best report I wrote as far as performance was a report called The Entrepreneurial Emergency. The Internet Business Manifesto sold a coaching program ultimately called BGS, which was Business Growth System. And the final report, The Entrepreneurial Emergency, sold a program called GPS, Guided Profit Systems, and it taught theory of constraints. And so in between there, I wrote 2 more manifestos following that, the missing chapter, the final chapter. The final chapter is all about Agora. And then I wrote 2 doctrines, the Attention Age Doctrine 1, which was telling internet marketers that attention was going to become the scarcest commodity online, and what the implications of that were. The Attention Age Doctrine 2, which told people that I think I knew where attention was going to be going. It was going to be going to social media, and what the implications of that were. And then I wrote the Maven Manifesto with Jay Abraham, and then the Entrepreneurial Emergency. So those were in those 18 months, I was very prolific.
Yeah.
And, they were all free reports. So we just used an opt-in, and each of them were designed to shift a set of beliefs that would get people to value what it was I was going to offer, because all of those reports sold people things that, had you asked them beforehand if they were interested in a business coaching program or a program on theory of constraints or any of the other programs, they would have said no. And so if we want to talk about what made the Internet Business Manifesto work, when I wrote it, I wasn't sure, but I it's been a long time, and now I'm pretty confident I know why. And it's based on a couple of things. So do you want me to tell you, like, walk you through it? Like, that's,
Yeah,
I assume,
absolutely.
what I should do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first idea, and then I'll get into like the heart of it, but
Okay.
two like overarching kind of thoughts that kind of I started with. One was Mark Ford and I used to hang out like at a cigar bar, and smoke cigars with a bunch of people, and everyone would end up going home earlier than Mark and I. And then when everyone left, we would kind of just theorize about marketing and stuff like that. We'd like to come up with theories. And one time we were talking about like trying to come up with new definitions of marketing. And we had this thought that like, okay, let's say you sell something you really believe in, not that, and you believe in it, that's why you're selling it, not that you sell it and therefore you believe in it, but that you have come to a conclusion that like the marketplace would be well served if they bought this, and your prospects don't necessarily feel that way, right? Well, there's a reason for that, if you believe that this would really serve your market, you've probably had experiences that have led you to come to that conclusion, and your market hasn't had those experiences, so they haven't come to that conclusion. So one way of looking at marketing, and I still use this when I'm teaching people because it's a good way for people to kind of just grasp the task at hand, is that, what we have to do is we have to figure out a way to lead people in a much faster way to that same epiphany, that same realization. And so if we can kind of identify what led you to that conclusion, we can then translate that some way, some shape to your prospect. So that was one thought like that I walked into the manifesto with. The other was something I heard Dan Kennedy say, and he said it he sold a program called the Coaching and Consulting Boot Camp, and that came with 4 teleseminars where he answered people's questions. And I didn't get it live. I bought I bought it like a prepackaged home study course. And at that time I was a coach and I had no front ends. I just had my coaching program, and I had been coaching people like Ryan Dice and, Mike Filsaime, a lot of people that were gurus, but I was pretty unknown. And I thought that at the time, like if I wanted to have a business that made me like $100,000 a month, I would need some front ends. I'd need a big affiliate army. Like I had this whole mapped out of what I thought I needed. And the challenge was I didn't have any of those things. And also I was kind of afraid to take ideas from my coaching program and put it into my products. I felt like that might cannibalize my coaching program. And someone asked that exact question, like during one of the follow-up calls that Dan Kennedy did. And I still remember his answer because like it was kind of profound to me. It's so obvious now because I've been in direct marketing and stuff for so long, but back then it was news to me. Dan Kennedy laughed at him. So that was the first thing. And then he said, Bubba.
He did.
Yeah, he said, Bubba, he called him Bubba. And he said, Bubba, you just don't get it. You take your best ideas and you put it in your front end products. That's what's going to get them to want to buy your coaching in the first place.
Right.
And, and I was just as guilty, like when I heard that, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the manifesto, with both of those thoughts in mind, right? Well, like what was it that had convinced me that business building was severely missing from the internet marketing space? Because at that time, no one was, I think I was like one of the first online business coaches, because at least in internet marketing, it was just all marketing stuff all the time. And what I've realized though, over time was, and this is kind of the way I approach it now, is that when you look at any market, at the end of the day, what a market is just a bunch of people that share a conflict. And the conflict is either a goal unattained or a problem unresolved. That's it. That's why they're in the market. And most people didn't join the market yesterday, which means that they've tried things and they're still in the market, which means that they haven't gotten the outcome that they want. And if you think about people that are trying to get an outcome and haven't been able to get it, they've probably tried like the common ways of doing it. And at that time it was marketing, and they were trying lots of different marketing tactics. The best news you could hear is that you're doing everything right. You're just missing one thing, right? Like that would be the best information you could hear, because the alternative is you're doing everything wrong. That's certainly not a pleasant thing to hear. So everything you're doing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. And the message of the manifesto was sort of like that. I mean, I did bifurcate the reader into 2 paths, like you're either an opportunity seeker or you're a strategic entrepreneur. But the underlying message was that, marketing is important. There's no doubt marketing is important, but marketing is not the only thing. In fact, business is the bigger topic. Marketing is the most important part of business, but if you don't understand anything else about business, then you're probably going to experience X, Y, and Z. And so what I did was I took the problems of the marketplace and recategorized those problems that I knew my prospects were experiencing, because as a coach, you know only too well what people really are experiencing because people open up to coaches. And I recategorized them as symptoms of being an opportunity seeker. So many people had the experience of kind of self-identifying themselves as opportunity seekers because they were experiencing all these symptoms. And it kind of, in a kind of strange way, it appealed to entrepreneurs because, the U diagram like spoke to their frustration level, but it also spoke to like biz oppers because it turned learning business into an opportunity almost. Like it was the magic ingredient that they were missing. And so, it kind of appealed to both sides. And so it redefined the problem. And what I found is that the last report, the entrepreneurial emergency, also redefined the problem. And all my reports in between were not problem centric. They were solution centric, and they all did well, but only the manifesto and the entrepreneurial emergency were like blockbusters for me. And both of those took the problems that people were experiencing recategorized it so that like, and I recognized later on, I didn't recognize it then, that by doing that, a couple things happened. One, there was really no way for a prospect to say this didn't apply to me because I was describing their problems, and people would tell me like it felt like you were standing over my shoulder. And I think that that's one of the biggest obstacles these days when selling, not necessarily financial stuff, but when selling like improvement or business stuff. The first easy out for a prospect is to say, this doesn't apply to me, or this doesn't apply to my business, right? And Dan Kennedy had that famous sign in the back of his seminar, because so many people would say it, that my business is different, right? Like that my customers aren't going to respond this way. So everyone feels that way. So that's totally bypassed if I'm describing their problems like on the page, right? Like that's gone. And I've had that experience like with ADD where I would read a book and I was like, holy shit, they're describing me, right? And then it's like, that just gets me more interested because I feel like I'm going to finally get the solution to what my problem is. So I think that by being problem centric, it resonated. And I think that what was the right time, right place and all that, where I was lucky, was that it was a message that people hadn't heard before. And because of that, that's where like the viral pass along was insane. I mean, people were talking about it on blogs and like it was crazy. And I think that was more, that can't be replicated. Like even the entrepreneurial emergency, which did really well, didn't come close to the pass along that the manifesto had. And I think it was like people read it and they felt like they had finally realized what they were doing wrong. And so they felt like this urge to share it with other people that they knew that were also in like doing the same things that they were doing. And that was luck. That was just, I think, a message that people, as they read it, what they were seeing was their problems. And then they were seeing these different ways of doing things that they could appreciate, like right there when they were looking at it. Holy shit. Like if I did it this way, my life would be easier and I could see how this would be more successful. So it was like it was painting an easier path, but it was also painting a path that people could see would be more effective. And, I think that's some of the reasons. I actually taught a workshop, like as I was contemplating leaving the industry, which I did for about 5 years, in about 2012, I was thinking about like, is there anything that I haven't taught that if I didn't teach, I feel like I should teach because like it's something that I know that no one else knows. And so I did 2 workshops where 15 people at each workshop, where I taught like my report writing strategy that I had learned. And because like that was the only thing that I felt like of all the things I've ever done, that was really unique to me as far as like writing something that really shifted a bunch of people's beliefs and made a product necessary when it seemed like irrelevant before. So, but
Yeah, I
fire
think
away.
I think it's interesting how, especially copywriters and marketers, we love to copy sales pages and funnels and things like that. And I know that's part of, and really those reports are kind of sales letters in their own way, but we don't do it. We don't collect swipes as much of the free downloads and things like that and really study those. Like, we like to study the thing that got us to get it, but we don't study the report itself a lot of times. And I think that's what's unique about that, is like, there's so many lessons in that, and they all double as sales letters. We kind of know that. But that's one of the things that I like about this conversation, is there's a whole nother area that I don't think people are really doing their autopsies and things like that, and their swipe files, collecting those types of things. Like, if you go back to the old boardroom stuff and things like that, the deliverables are interesting to look at too, not just the sales letters, because that's where the sales letters actually came from.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, when I wrote it, I wasn't thinking that I was writing a sales piece, really. Like, although I was writing to try and convince people that they needed to understand things that they had no appreciation for. And so it was rich in content from a standpoint of like sharing there was no how to, though. It was all what, right? There was no thinking involved. There weren't any exercises of any consequence. But the beauty of it was, and this was more luck and just, I guess, a function of what I was doing. I ended up selling a lot of stuff that no one else was selling. So it not only sold well, but I really had, like, for a very long time, I was like in a blue ocean, to use common like vernacular. I sold stuff that no one else was selling. And I was selling stuff, not that what people had wanted, but what I felt people needed. And I think I was fortunate in that way. And it's one of the reasons why I think I have still to this day a really good reputation, is because my products delivered, because I wasn't swayed by what the audience felt they needed, because most of the time they were wrong. And, but most of the time that's what you have to sell, because that's what they want. And I had kind of just tripped on a way of selling stuff that I felt was really powerful stuff, because I could sell it. And I also felt like there were a lot of people who were better at selling what people wanted than me, like pretty much every other internet marketing guru. But this was my like sweet spot, that I could sell stuff that people didn't want.
You talked about Mark Ford being a buddy of yours, and y'all hang out. I remember him saying something similar when he started Palm Beach Letter, that it was the thing that he really wanted to sell and thought people really needed, as opposed to what a lot of the newsletters were, where it's what people would buy.
Yeah, I mean, Mark's like a father figure to me. I mean, he's one of my 3 main mentors in my life. And when he started Palm Beach Letter, he's like, I'm going to try what you do. And I'm going to try and sell that. And, I also had this quote from Mark. It was taped to my desk for years, because he said, I forget exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, that if I sold magic, it would be like my life would be 10 times easier. And I'd make 10 times more.
Yeah.
But I've lost the thought, but I've taped it to my desk so that anytime I would bitch and moan about like having to do what I did, just recognizing that it was a choice and I was taking a harder road. But it was a road that when I nailed it, like I would have a blockbuster success,
Yeah. And I think not enough people are doing that. Part of it's survival. You got to pay the bills. You got to do that kind of stuff. And you tend to default to what's easier to sell, what people want. We see that everywhere. But if you can figure out that thing that lights you up and that you've personally experienced and gone through, I mean, there's so much more, I guess, heart would be a good way to say it, like in the product, like and that comes through, and that's missing in a lot of products these days.
Yeah, I mean, what Mark said to me after he read the manifesto, and he said to me, I know that it's legitimate, like what I'm about to tell you, but it's also a copywriting trick. When I read it, it felt like I was reading something that was written by someone who just discovered a secret and they were really excited about sharing it.
Yeah.
And, you can only do that if you're a member of the market, right? Like, I don't know how I would be able to do that if I wasn't a member of the market.
Right.
I was a member of the market and I felt like this was a better solution. I was excited to share it. And
Yep.
I was. And so that enthusiasm kind of conveyed itself. And my last report, the Entrepreneurial Emergency, which sold this theory of constraints thing, I had wanted to learn theory of constraints for years. And I was convinced at how powerful it was. But I'm also kind of lazy. And I knew that I would never really master it unless I went out and sold it. Then I'd have to master it. And so, it was a way of like, I was convinced that it was powerful. All I needed to do was convince enough other people to feel it was powerful. And then I'd be motivated by millions of dollars on the line to learn it so I could teach it. And so, yeah, it conveyed the same thing. And with theory of constraints, just to kind of give people like another kind of concept there, like, so I wanted to sell people on this methodology that's from manufacturing, really not related to internet marketing, but I applied it to internet marketing. And so the way I sold it was like, the report starts out asking a question. It's like, what do you think is going to be the biggest indicator of your success? Do you think it's what you know? Do you, people your passion, the right niche, the right offer, blah, 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 blah. And, I list like 30 things. And I was like, what if I told you it was none of those things? What if I told you that all of those things just are, all those things are indicators of potential? That unless you're at your full potential, what is robbing you of your potential is a constraint. And odds are right now, all you're doing is adding more and more potential and wondering why your potential doesn't equal your success, right? And so really your success is going to be your potential minus your constraint. And you've only been focusing on your potential. Let me show you a way to cash in on a lot more of the potential you've been adding, but not reaping the rewards on. And so I shifted the argument to like this new concept for people that all of a sudden then opened up like this possibility of, because by that time I knew I was talking to a group of people who were trying to solve a conflict and they hadn't been able to solve it. So coming in with the same information that they already heard would not be effective. And that I could then create this argument, in the report, and both of them did this, where like I was giving them a way of them coming to the conclusion that it wasn't their fault, like that they couldn't have been successful the way they were going about it. So that self-esteem sale also happened, that like they could let themselves off the hook without me saying it's not your fault. I hate when I see in a sales letter, it's not your fault, because that just seems like the most like placating kind of like, well, you don't even fucking know me. How do you know it's not my fault? I might not even crack the box open, right? Like, so, so leading people to that conclusion and offering them just an entirely different way to get to the outcome, I think is what both of those things had, the bookends, both of those had in common.
Yeah. Jonathan is in manufacturing sales. So he's nodding his head when you were talking about that stuff.
Yeah. That's funny. I've been in manufacturing, Rich, for about 20 years in consulting, and the theory of constraints I know quite well. So you're talking my language for sure. One of the first books I ever read was The Goal, and which is a fabulous book.
Book. I mean, but Eli never taught any of like the hardcore work that has to be done, Right. That stuff is difficult. And that was difficult to teach internet marketers because it's like algebra, it's like, it's cumulative. You miss lesson 2, by lesson 4, you have no clue what's going on. So it's, it's powerful.
Yeah. Cause it's almost another side of the business that nobody deals with, kind of like what you did the first time where you were talking to marketers that didn't understand business. Now you might be maybe the market is matured and they kind of understand business a little bit. But now they don't understand this piece because everybody talks, especially in the internet marketing world and even the, sales. I think about, you mentioned Jay Abraham earlier, like, the three ways to move a business, right?
Right.
More customers, more often, larger cart value, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that never talks about the constraints. Like that's just pile on, do more without ever fixing anything or looking for those opportunities. So
and that was the audience I was speaking to, really. Like, I mean, it was a digital version of that, but most people had studied Dan Kennedy, Jay Abraham, as I did. So when I talked about process mapping and project management, like these were things that people never heard of because all they had ever been reading was marketing stuff.
Right.
And it was like the first time that they were exposed to many of these concepts. And it's interesting because so Jay Abraham and Mark Ford are like my two primary mentors. And
Yeah.
I have interesting stories about that. But all Jay really did was take all the principles of direct response and apply that to the entrepreneurial market. So when a lot of people have heard Jay say, like, a strategy in one industry has the power of an atomic bomb in another industry. He's not only talking about like a specific tactic, he's talking about a whole body of work, because that's what he did.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Like, I took bodies of work outside of the internet marketing community and I brought it inside. And it's a lot easier to do that than to be like a genius in creating your own stuff. And then you have this reservoir of stuff to bring with you that you don't as long as you have the marketing chops to market it, you don't run out of stuff.
Yeah.
There's more opportunities to do that than I think people imagine.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think of Simon Sinek, his latest
Mhm.
book is just a retelling of the older little pamphlet or book that was written, Infinite Games. And he didn't even really knock it off. I mean, it's like basically the same thing. He's just retelling the story, and now he's selling consulting around it, because it was this idea of infinite versus finite games that nobody really talked about in the business world. And now he's got a whole new empire on it,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best ideas are there. It's just a question of finding an audience that hasn't been exposed to it.
Yeah, which seems impossible on the surface, but the fact is, like, every industry is so focused on their little way of doing things. I mean, Dan Kennedy talks about that all the time, that, ideas that we think are old and used up, they would be new.
That, and also I'd say that, like, most people, when I talk about like being able to describe people's problems better than they're able to describe it, that sounds hard too. But most people don't spend a lot of time figuring out ways to describe their problems. So it's actually a lot easier than most people imagine. Most people haven't refined talking about their problem. And so, with a little practice, once you know the problem, being able to articulate it better than them is not that difficult.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the basic copy formulas, right? Problem,
Right.
agitate, solution. And
Mhm.
that's what I was thinking as you were talking about the different reports, the two on the bookends, that's what they were. It was problem, agitate, solution. And it seems obvious. But at the same time, I think we tend to shy away from it too. I know I do as a copywriter, because it feels a little intrusive. Sometimes it feels a little like you're just, twisting a knife, which you are.
Yeah, you are, but when you do it from a standpoint of of talking about the problems, not like you have this problem, but people who have this more root cause issue will experience these things.
Yes.
Right.
Now you're talking about it like kind of arm's distance, but they're self-diagnosing. They're like, oh, wait a second, and they're, it's like, I had this experience, right, where I got royally screwed over in a business deal by someone I was extremely close to. And this is like before I got online. And to the point that, like, it changed my personality. I had rage, and I became like kind of an asshole. And I'd always been like a low key person, and I didn't
Sure.
like the person I had become. So I went to a psychologist. This was right after I moved down to Florida, and I went for like 6 months to just kind of work out all those issues so that I could kind of get back to the person I was before. And at the end of that, the psychologist, I'd gotten what I'd paid for. I had worked out those issues. And at the last meeting, the psychologist said, total side note, I think you might have ADD. You might want to check that out one of these days. And I've always been able to hyper focus. So I thought that he has no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
I'd be able, like in college, to go 2 or 3 days without sleep, just like going through one textbook. And so to me, I was like, ADD, no way. But like a couple years later, I'm flaky. I details in it one ear, one out the next. Like, and I suffer from a lot of the symptoms of ADD. I didn't know it at the time. And I was in a Borders bookstore in Boca Raton, and at that time, a famous ADD book came out. I forget the name of it now, written by John Rady and Ed Howell, Driven to Distraction. And I picked it up and I started skimming it, and I felt like it was talking to me. I was like, holy shit. And I bought it, took it home, read it. And in the moment I was reading it, as it was describing like all of my issues and then saying that these are all symptoms of ADD, in that moment, I felt like a newfound hope, because all these issues that I had tried to solve, I wasn't able to solve. And for the first time, it gave me a reason why I hadn't been able to solve it. And incorrectly at that moment, I thought, oh, wow, all I got to do is manage my ADD, and then all my problems are going to disappear. Like, that's all I got to do now, right? Like, I don't have 10 problems. I have one problem, and I've never even tried to solve this one problem. And that's what I was trying to do in my report. Like, not maybe consciously, maybe by the entrepreneurial emergency, yes, but like, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get people to self-diagnose and have that like new hope all of a sudden that they finally could get the solution, because they now finally knew what was stopping them. And, and so that, like, that experience that I had, I feel like that's what I was trying to give people.
Yeah. It's funny how all those little experiences in life just kind of add up, and, you're not even aware of it, but you're using them and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Jonathan, do you have?
Yeah, I was going to say it's a cool follow-up to that would be, I was reading one of the blog posts on your over at Strategic Profits. You have 7 reasons why the F word is holding you back. So that was really good, because I think focus is a really big problem with a lot of people today. There's so many things that captures their attention, and they don't know how to, I think it was, Sean, a book that we went through in our group study a few years back was Deep Work. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Cal Newport.
Yep. Fantastic book. And it just talks about, the importance of diving deep into, your projects. But I find today that people are so distracted. And there's an excerpt that I highlighted on one of your blog posts over at Strategic Profits. It says, many business owners I meet have habitualized their short attention span and can no longer focus on any project for an extended period of time. It's like training yourself to be stupider and stupider with each passing day. And is like, well, you can thank Mother Nature for that. But, those are things that it's an honor. You think about it with our culture today, you've got, people are texting and, every alert that they get on their phone, it captures their attention. So it's so hard for people to really focus on projects and really dive deep into the work they're doing.
Yeah. I have to write offline. I have to on paper and pen. I cannot it's too convenient for me to like look up something and then lose an hour, like in the, in a flash of a moment. I don't have the discipline to just write in front of my computer. I have to like get a pad and paper, be away from anything electronic, to even like get into that headspace.
That's a good strategy. Just shut everything off.
I have to, like, and and that's the only way, like, that, but I don't know. I find it there's something cool. I enjoy the process. I enjoy it a lot more than just typing too, and it's also, there's something about writing also, because I also have this bad tendency to want to edit while I'm writing, and that goes away when I'm writing by hand,
right?
Because you can't just like delete lines and then start over. Yeah. So there's benefits to it, but I think that most people don't. Well, on a business, this is something I've been trying to share more often, because like, when I first started coaching people 16 years ago, I think I was early. I wasn't one of the first, but I was early in teaching people to build the business around their strengths. And most people are aware of that now. So there's nothing like kind of revolutionary about that. But the other part that I used to teach people that I don't hear people talking about is really also building a business around who you really are. And I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, what they do is they have this idea of like some mythological entrepreneur or them at their best self, and they kind of build a business around that. Right. And then they beat themselves up when they're behaving the way they've always behaved, and now it's holding their business back. And so I've always been clear about like who I am. Yeah. And so like the reason I wrote reports that then sold the coaching program, and then the coaching program became a product is because I'm also a perfectionist and I would never finish a product. Like if you locked me in a room for 2 years, I don't know that I would finish a product. Like, it would never get finished. I'd always like think of more to add. And so I had to figure out a way where like the product would get finished. And the only way that that would get finished is that like, and I found that like, like when I sold off the manifesto, I sold this 11-week program. And each week I delivered a module, and I delivered that module at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. And it didn't matter if I started at 5 p.m. the previous Wednesday, as soon as I finished, or I started like on Monday or Tuesday, like working on the next module, I always finished at 2:59 the following Wednesday. That's like, and I needed that, like that possibility of like humiliation and millions of dollars on the line and that deadline to really like to get it done. And so that's just one of many things that like I engineered my business so that it could be successful with the flawed me, as opposed to the idyllic me. Because like, I read that book, like, I guess it was like 10 years ago, Change or Die, where like, people are given the ultimatum, like, they get a quadruple bypass, they get out of the hospital, and it's like, look, you have to totally change your lifestyle or you're going to die. And only 10% of the people change their lifestyle, 90% die. And like, if your business relies on you changing, the likelihood of your success plummets. And you might not fail, but you'll be stuck in a business that you feel you're holding back based on your bad behaviors, when you could have just designed the business to be successful with your bad behaviors. That's one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur, is that you can actually make the rules. You make the rules. Yeah. And I still see that, like, from my perspective, when I coach people, and I don't do that much personal coaching anymore, but when I get involved in a business, almost always, it's that pervasive that like the business has been designed for some mythological perfect entrepreneur, not the entrepreneur that designed the business. And it's like, it's like you realize you could make this work any which way you want. And most people don't. I don't know why that is.
Yeah. And the ones that do tend to knock it out of the park. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Life Coach School in Brooke Castillo.
Oh,
she's built hers where it seems like around her actual self. Like, and she's open about this. She's done like 25 million. She works 3 days a week. But when she's on. But she knows she also needs the big rest periods, and that kind of stuff. And it's
that too. That's like a sprinter versus a marathon runner. That's the way I've always looked at it. And everyone talks about business being a marathon, but I've always felt like to get attention, you have to sprint. And so I've always felt like I'm going to come into the market, I'm going to sprint for a short period of time. I'm going to compete with a lot of marathon runners. So I'm going to get way out ahead. I'm going to get attention. I'll be exhausted when it's done, but then I'll disappear for a while, and and I'll totally recoup. So I get that. Like, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. So, I mean, she's just an example that came to mind for me. But so that kind of leads me to wonder, you said you were kind of off the map for a while and you're kind of back. So what business are you building around the current version of Rich?
Well, what I want to do. And so actually, I sold half my business to Agora, and, because I had a conversation with, it was either Bill and Mark or Mark and Miles, two of those three. Yeah. Bill, Mark, and Miles, right? Asked me, I was at a, I've worked closely with Agora since like 2004. And I was at a event of theirs, a jamboree, that's what they call it, where they have all the publishers from international and everything. And then I think, that was one of those. And they asked me if it was possible for Agora to have a $100 million business in internet marketing. And I said, yeah, I think it's totally possible. And I think the way you would do it is exactly the way you do everything at Agora. You'd have a business that had a bunch of personalities in it. You'd have a multi-guru business in internet marketing. And so that conversation just evolved. And I always knew that, like, for me to be really free of a business, I would need to have other personalities in the business, because if it was all about me, then you never get free. I also realized that, like, if I was going to build that business, I probably would have already done it, because I had a bunch of people who are now gurus who worked for me, and I didn't turn them into gurus. They they did it on their own, but they did it outside my business. You know, Todd Brown, Justin Brook, like the bunch of people who worked for me that like have, you know, are big deals in their own right. So I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that alone. And so, I started working with Agora more closely in 2017. And just a couple months ago in February, we launched a product called Steal Our Winners, which is right now it's like a steal of the century. It's sold at an Agora price point, so it's $49 a year. And I have about 60 contributors. It's everyone that, you know, most people would know, from Ryan Dyson, Russell Brunson, Ryan Levesque, Maxwell Finn from Unicorn, James Von Ellswick, like all the top media buyers, all the top people in internet marketing. And each month I do 10 interviews on Zoom. And so that's the reason why there's so many contributors, is that I only want someone to contribute when they have a strategy or tactic that's working right now that most people wouldn't know. And the goal is that these strategies and tactics are exciting enough that when someone hears it, they want to run to their computer and actually do it, right? And that are all like backed up by some, like working right now with some numbers. Right. And so we started that just in February. So February, March, April. So we're 3 months in. Like I'm now working on the May issue. Yeah, so I'm doing, the original concept was, you know, between 8 and 12 of these a month. And so far it's been like 10 every month. And what we do is like, I get on a Zoom call with these guys and women, and they share the strategy, and the call can be like 10 minutes long, or it could be an hour and 20 minutes long. I'll give you like 2 examples in a minute. And then we take that and we turn it into a strategy document where we lay out the steps, what, you know, people can expect by deploying this strategy, et cetera. So they can kind of read it real quick and decide whether this is even something they want to watch, or they want to watch, you know, a different interview. And the strategies have been like off charts, like really cool stuff. And so I'm always talking to new contributors. Like whenever I see anyone doing something cool, I reach out to them and say, like, you know, do you want to share what you're doing? And so they're like, well, tell me what it's like. And so on this one day, for the very first issue, I had 2 calls back to back. One was with Nick Shackelford, and another one was with this guy, Jordan Menard. So Nick Shackelford, for those people that don't know him, he's the guy that did the fidget spinner, right? Like, that was pretty successful. And his number one marketing strategy is using influencers. So he walked me through probably an hour and 10 minutes, walked me through the whole process. How do you find influencers? You know, where to find them, the tool to find them, how much you should pay them, the tool to figure that out, you know, the deal that you should strike with them, how to like co-manage their ad account with them so that you can then get them more fans while you're also showing that influencer all over the place using the product, right? And just all the way through. And that was like an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. The very next call is with Jordan Menard. And Jordan is one of the top like media buyers for Facebook and YouTube. And he scaled Sam Ovens. He's Bob Proctor's media buyer. He's the Morrison Brothers media buyer. He helped get Jordan Belfort up and running on YouTube. And so like he's really solid. And his call was 10 minutes because like one of his favorite types of ads are these like long Facebook text ads. And he showed like for account after account, you know, for the people he manages, when he added "it's true ... to the beginning of the text ad, response went up like for every single one. That was the whole strategy. That's it, right? But we've had a bunch of subscribers try it and it worked. And you know, this was in February, and it's like, you know, barbells, right? Like, you know, it's 2 polar different sides, but both of those are really fascinating. And every month, like there are different strategies that these different people are deploying that like are really exciting and is fulfilling like the overall idea. And the long-term goal is we want to get like 100,000 people as subscribers, right? Like use Agora's muscle to to really kind of leverage the fact that we can go negative up front and make this incredible deal. And then we'll raise the price, and we'll take advantage of every raising of the price, right? Like from 49 to 79, 79 to 99, and then maybe it goes to monthly, and it's $7 a month or $10 a month. And then, eventually it should be $49 a month, but like we're going to stair step our way there. And to me, it's like the ideal way to kind of launch the business by having a multi-guru front end. Yeah. And so that's what I've been doing. And then in between years, I took time off because I wasn't really sure I wanted to stay in this industry. My girlfriend, she just retired, but she was like the number 2 person at Bank of America and Merrill Lynch for the uber wealthy, like all billionaire type clients. And so, the people that are like the managing partners of Blackstone and all these hedge funds. And I was thinking about like working at one of the hedge funds for a year and seeing if I liked it, take a lowly job in one of those things. Like I wasn't going to get some premier job in any of these places,
right?
But I just wanted to work around smart people. Like I thought I would, I like being around people that are smarter than me. And I thought that would be fun. And then the whole idea of having to get to work at a certain time and having a boss wearing a suit, just like the reality of that kind of came in. And I was like, you know what, it's kind of cool selling information with no margin, with 100% margin, and I can make my own hours, and I'm kind of a big deal. And, so I ended up coming back, but yeah, so I took like 5 years off trying to find myself and going through a midlife crisis and all that kind of stuff. But I guess it was also a needed break because I worked my ass off from 2006 to 2012ish.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm so the new service. You sign up for that? Is that the offer on the homepage of Strategic Profits?
It's
or is it
they go to strategicprofits.com/rich, which is like not the best copy. I mean, we have like 3 different new promos coming out that just came out of legal, but the offer's still the same. And we launched it with a live stream at a Mark Ford cigar bar. And it was a 24-hour live stream, and everyone flew in. So Levesque was there, right? Like Russell flew in, like everybody flew in, and it was like a new guest every half hour. And I did the live stream for the 24 hours, but I've done that before. But last time I did it all by myself. So this was a lot more fun. And I was broadcasting, like Mark's Ford Cigar Bar has like a 3-car garage and then a glass wall into his bar. And so I was in the garage and everyone else was in the bar having a good time all night. And it was a lot of fun. And it was so much fun that we might do that annually. Like, because we did a mastermind the whole day the whole day of, and then we started broadcasting at 7 p.m. So it was an amazing mastermind because like all those people were there. Yeah. And it was cool. It was cool. It was fun. And those were, at the time, those were all the confirmed contributors. And that list has just grown as I've found more people. Like someone who I just got in touch with, I haven't spoken to him yet, but I really like what he's doing. And he's a copywriter, is Sean Vossler. Like, have you seen his ads for his book on Instagram?
No.
It's like, it's a really well-designed, it's like 7-figure academy or something like that. If you've been on Instagram, you've seen it. And I don't know, I forget who he's written copy for, but as a copywriter, you definitely need to check it out because like it is probably one of the best jobs I've ever seen at someone positioning a copywriting book as something so much more than a copywriting book as far as influence, persuasion, like really does an amazing job. Like, let's see if I can see if he's in my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
He always is.
So a guy that I stumbled across this week was, I can't remember his name, but he's King Kong Marketing down in Australia. He's got an agency called King Kong, and his stuff is really good. Really good.
You remember the guy's name?
Subri something.
I'll have to check that out. King Kong?
He's all in my inbox right now because I got the free plus shipping offer for the book. And and his follow-up stuff is really good. So think it's Subri something. Can't remember.
The Indian?
It's not a,
Sounds Indian, right?
no, I think he doesn't look Indian at all.
No?
So I don't know if it's an Australian name or whatever. Oh, that one. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I've seen that one.
I've seen that one on Facebook all the time.
Yeah, so that's Sean Vossler.
Okay.
Mhm.
And we've just been talking through like text, but like, so I see something like this and I'm like, that's interesting. I want to
Yeah.
talk to this guy. Like he might have something to share that he's discovered that other people haven't. And then the question is, if he has, is he willing to share it? And,
Right.
but I've only gotten like one no so far. And I could understand why someone might say no.
Right.
You know, but like the way we reciprocate is like, if you're willing to share, then we're willing to promote your stuff when you want us to promote, and we can promote
Absolutely.
hard, and
Yeah.
we can put you in our daily, and we can, you know, we can do really well for you. So it's kind of a, you know, a give and take, right?
Yeah. So just for the listeners, some of the names on this, what do you call it? Or do you have a name for these, or the council, or like just contributors, or?
That was, so the big idea for that campaign, and, you know, Sean, like, so when I taught my report writing workshop, I used the sales letter that you wrote, like you wrote a lead for us.
Mhm.
And that was really the first time I ever really kind of saw Agora copy like for my kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we had people write leads for us to kind of like, the idea is that I wrote reports every 2 months for my founders club. And we had people write different leads for us. Like we gave people notes of what the next report was going to be. And everyone else wrote really boring leads. Like it was just like more the same old hyperbolic bullshit. And Sean wrote like, and it was something about getting messages through and how most people have built up like a filter for stuff. And I don't remember any of the details.
I think I did one. I think I did one. It's kind of around the Bermuda Triangle of marketing.
Yeah, well, that I remember your thing exactly, and that's what it was. It was like the Bermuda Triangle of marketing, where messages come in but they don't come out.
Right.
And I was like,
that's great.
Yeah, it was great. It was phenomenal, and I used that actually in the report writing workshop, where I was like, you know, as an example of like turning the problem into a metaphor. And yeah, so props to you for that. I don't know what reminded me of that, but anyway.
I never got to actually do that project though, so
yeah.
Makes me sad to remember that, but yeah, you know, maybe we can fix that in the future.
Yeah, I think we can fix that.
So,
I think I got something now that's much easier to sell.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. I mean, the list of people on here is, you know, pretty stout. I mean, if you've been online at all, these guys are in your Instagram feed, in your Facebook feed. Yeah. Like I know several of these guys personally.
Neil Patel, Scott Oldford, Russell.
Yeah.
Ryan, Todd Brown,
Mike Dillard's here in Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some big names. We did a Valdo's book on the show here. Thought that was a great, that 16-word sales. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds really simple. But you still have to know copy to pull that off, even the way he wrote it. Because when you sit down to do it, and
he does a really good job. Like, cause you know, Evaldo's part of my team, not like, it's not my team, but like we work on the same team, me, Evaldo, Katie, Vogel, if you know her, and Pete Coyne is the publisher, and Pete's like the prodigy at Agora. Like, I think I know I don't think any other publisher has built $100 million business by the time they were 27. You know, he's publishes Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, London Real, me, and Jim Rickards, and also the two guys, like the guys that they have a show on CNBC. I forget their names because I'm not a financial guy, but yeah. So Pete's the publisher of the Paradigm, and that's what the division that we're all in. And yeah, it's like I got what I wanted as far as working with a bunch of smart people, like not in a hedge fund, but in marketing, which I can appreciate even more. But what Evaldo did a really good job in, and I don't think it's ever going to be sold, but when he trains copywriters, like he really walks people through how to use the answers to those 10 questions, where they belong in the sales letter. Like, you know, you want to have these first 2 questions answered in the first paragraph, then like, you know, he breaks it down like even further. And it's it's a great model like that he developed.
Yeah. Super simple. And I mean, there's still art to it for sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
If it was
the science
easy,
is definitely
and then, you know, if it was that easy, everyone would be a copywriter, right?
exactly. Yeah. You start, yeah, it's funny because like you can get templates and swipe files and everything else. And I do some audits and stuff for where I'm at right now. And like, even when you give people templates and it's like pretty in-depth templates, like there's still just that little bit of writerness that you have to have. Like you have to have a little bit of that writer in you, that to really craft that flow and that rhythm and the other stuff that makes it sing.
You know, it was really like, you know, I had worked with Agora for all these years, but I really worked on the outside. And so when I got in the inside in 2017, like I really didn't fully appreciate until I came inside how different the sales letter writing process. And like you gave me a glimpse of that when you wrote the Bermuda Triangle of Marketing, but you know, how really like copywriters will spend a majority of their time coming up with the big idea and everything else is so considered like the easy part, like from
Right.
there.
Yep.
And yeah, and there is no like shortcut to the big idea, you know, and it's interesting because when Stansberry had like, you know, the end of America and then that was dying. And then he had all the smart people he knew go to like Jackal Island, right? Like, and I was fortunate to be there. And after the first day of brainstorming, I was smoking a cigar with Mark Ford, and I said, "What do you think? You know, how do you think it's going?" And he's like, "They don't get it." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, they think it's about the idea. It has nothing to do with the idea. It has to do with the articulation of the idea. He's like, the end of America had been around for a long time, but it was the way that it was articulated at that moment that resonated. And I immediately like picked up my iPhone and wrote like myself an email, like with the subject line, like, it's not the idea, it's the articulation of the idea. Because like, you know, it took me a long time to really fully appreciate that, because that was back in 2012 or 11. But once I got inside Agora and really understood like how copywriters are trained, and, you know, and then also like why, and, you know, there's only, I don't know, I'm just going to make up a number, 20 ways that you can make money in the stock market. So if you don't come up with a metaphor to kind of make that idea not immediately transparent, they call it what do they call it? The categorical imperative, which is really not what it should be called. It's really categorical dismissal. You know, I've seen that before, kind of thing. So you have to use a metaphor, or you have to disguise like the actual way up front, or it'll be dismissed.
Yeah, I call it suspending disbelief, kind of taking it from the movie world, right? The whole thing when you're in a good movie is that they suspend disbelief. So everybody knows they're reading a sales letter of some form. So you have to suspend disbelief just long enough that they get them hooked. And I think that's what a lot of that does. So that's kind of my version of like categorical imperative, you know, that's what I try to do in that opening lead, is like, oh, this is cool. Even if they're trying to sell me something, it's kind of cool. I'm going to keep reading just to see where it goes. Right. Because even if I can get that much buy-in, I'll just see where this goes. I got them.
Well, and it also fulfills like, you know, and I don't put myself out there as a copywriter. I mean, I read all the classics and I understand it. I don't, you know, I don't know how to grab someone by the lapels. Like, that's why I always wrote reports, like, give me enough space and runway to educate my way to the sale. And I feel very confident, but I don't know that I can hook people up front. But I think it was like Hamptons, right? It was like when they tested all the headlines, curiosity and self-interest combined were the like killer combo. And that's what those things are really at the end of the day, when you've masked it and there's self-benefit in it, right? Like, that's what you've created, curiosity and self-interest.
Yeah. I think of it like a riddle, right? Like, if it's a good riddle, you can't sleep until you know the answer. And you just got to keep reading it. That's what I think about Agora copy, is it's like this riddle that the only way to solve the riddle is to buy the product.
Right. And then there are like sites that are dedicated to what the riddle answer is. So, you know, like I think Gumshoe or something like
Stock Gumshoe. Yep. That's how I knew I had a good promo, is when they immediately knocked it off at Stock Gumshoe. That was like a badge of honor, you know? So, well, man, we've been going for a while. Rich, this has been really fun. I don't know, Jonathan, do you have any last questions? Wrap up. I
No.
know we want to find out how
What's
people
that
can
link
learn
again?
more.
Is it strategicprofits.com/rich, right?
/rich. And there might
Cool.
be like a highlights video there from the actual live stream that we did, depending on when people watch this or hear this or whatnot.
Yeah.
No video right now, so it's not
Oh,
on
that's
there right
good
now.
because we had this like 3-hour best of the 24-hour. And
Yeah.
then people spent a long time on the website, but got like 10 ideas and then they left the page without buying. So we had to take that highlight off. Like, wow, the people are staying on this page for so long. That sounds, and then we would be like, oh, that's not good. But you know
like
what's interesting? I'll tell you one thing that from the registration process for the live stream that we did, that's been knocked off a few times, but hasn't been knocked off a lot of times. And it very much speaks to what we were just talking about as far as however we want to call it. I'll just keep calling it categorical dismissal so I don't forget what it is. So we had an upsell, right? And the upsell was me with a box with a question mark on it. And it was like, I said to people, you know, okay, I want to see how much you trust me. I have this box here. You can buy it for $30. I guarantee you that it's worth at least $1,000, but I'm not going to tell you what's in it. And I'm not going to reveal what's in it until the live stream. But if you trust me, you'll be very happy that you did. And if you don't trust me and you don't buy it, I guarantee that you'll regret that you didn't trust me. And it was like a 5-minute script that I read. And it totally eliminates categorical dismissal because you don't have no idea. Like you can't say and we had I don't remember the exact number now. It was somewhere between 75% and 80% conversion rate on that.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's been knocked off a few times. If you want, like, I'll send you the video of it so that you can see it. But it was, we crushed it. And so much so that like a few people have already knocked it off. And it was something that Jay Abraham and I often talked about doing like for years. Like we wanted to see like if we had social capital in the market and see if people trusted us. But I don't think it even had anything to do with that. It was such a pattern interrupt.
Oh yeah.
And people could return it. So really they're taking no risk, right? Like, and
well,
and
it
ended up
was
being like
curiosity and self-interest, just like you were talking. You mentioned,
and it ended up being like $3,000 worth of stuff in there.
Yeah.
But like, because like long term, I want people to be conditioned to trust me, right?
Yeah.
Like, but that was kind of fun, and it it converted like a motherfucker. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool. The whole fear of missing out too is in there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You don't want to be the idiot that didn't get it.
And it gave people a reason to
for
tune in.
$30. Yeah. I mean, seriously.
And then of course, after the live stream, people are asking where they can get it. It's like, no. Sorry.
too late now, buddy.
Too late now.
Yeah. So.
Too late. Yep.
All right. Well, Rich, anywhere else you want people to kind of check you out, or is that the place for them right now? That's it.
If they don't subscribe now, there's no hard push because if they don't subscribe now, they'll subscribe later, and I'll just make more money. So,
because the price right now is perfect, right?
Yeah, it's $49 a year. Like it's so ridiculous that people keep asking, "Are you sure that's not a month?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a month. It's $49 a year. Like it will not stay that price, but it is that price right now."
That's really cool.
Perfect.
Well, Jonathan, I will let you take us out.
Yeah. And we'll post a link on that for sure on our webpage. So, Rich, man, it's been a pleasure. I mean, all that you've shared today, it's good stuff. Anybody that mentions theory, constraints, and root cause analysis and all that good stuff is always welcome on the show.
Thanks. And I'm sorry if I dominated the conversation.
No, it was good.
Once I start drinking Jack, I kind of get very, I get verbal diarrhea.
It's good stuff. It's all good stuff. So
that's right.
I enjoyed it. I got lots of notes, so I'm good.
Well, Rich, thanks again, man. We'll be posting this here in the next day or two, and look forward to getting it out. And Sean, it's been fun, man. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
See ya.
All right. Good stuff.
Yeah, let me see. I think I might even have it in